Hello and welcome to Will It Boot, a new show with me, Matthew Buzzy, hardware analyst at PC Mag, and John Burek, computer shopper, editor-in-chief. We're here today to build a system live for you on air and answer the question, will it boot? We don't know yet because we haven't built it together. John, we have a lot of parts here. What are we gonna make today?
Well, we're going to be putting together a PC that costs around $300 if you're buying parts from Newegg or Amazon. We haven't actually tested any of these parts. We just got them in the mail, so will it boot? We don't know. So what we're going to do is start putting together the motherboard outside the case here and see where things lead.
We'll walk you through step by step, have some instructions, try to list out what we're going to do ahead of time so you can follow along. And yeah, this is a $300 system, so talk us a little bit about that before we start. Like, what can this do realistically? Who is this for?
Right, so this is basically the lowest cost PC you could build with Windows 10 that you probably won't regret later on. What you can do here
That's key.
That is key, yes. Nothing like buyer's remorse 5 minutes after you start up your system. Now, this actually will be a PC that you can upgrade as your budget allows. You'll be able to upgrade it with a dedicated graphics card, a slightly better processor if you find the need for it, more memory, and other peripherals such as more storage. So basically what we have here is the lowest cost system that you could put together and make into something better when your budget allows. Yes. So what we have here, one of our first pieces is the motherboard we chose, which is an AMD-based board from BioStar. But before we can install it in the case, which is going to be the first step, we're going to take a quick look inside and see what we're dealing with.
What do we got?
Well, this is a case from Zalman. It costs about $30 on Newegg or Amazon, and pretty basic.
A far cry from these several $100 cases that are out there.
There are. You can spend up to $500 on a case if you want, possibly even more. But this is a good basic box that should allow for upgrades later on. If you so choose, you could get a couple of hard drives in here, over here. You could put a DVD drive up here, an SSD up here and down here. And there's enough room front to back to put any video card in that you want. So we have a bunch of stuff here. Let's see. We're going to undo some twist ties.
Remove some.
What do we have there?
Some, inspection report. This is the important stuff. This is what you need.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What did
it passes inspection, I think.
Is it okay?
That's good, yeah.
That's usually the first step, is to make sure that
we're okay.
We're okay. All right. So we're just taking some twist ties off over here. We have
the most thrilling part of any build.
Oh, of course, yeah. So we're going to save these. These actually are going to be our best friends later on. Let's put them over here, and we have a baggie. Oh, you got that? Great.
Got one more.
All right. So let's swivel this back around. So there's the empty case. What we have here is a bag of small parts, and we're going to dump them out over here because we're going to need a few of these. Manual.
Don't ever read instructions, people.
No. Let's see. So these are some rubber feet. This is what we're looking for, and more zip ties to tidy up the cables later. So let's dump out what we have in the bag here. What we're looking for are these silver things, which I will show you in a moment. These are known as standoffs. So standoffs are little silver screws, sometimes made of brass, that screw into the bottom of the case and allow you to put a board about 1/4 of an inch off the case bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these out here, put them aside, and see where we need to position them in the case. So let's open up the motherboard box. Okay.
We got
accessories. Thank you very much. Let's put these accessories aside. We'll need these in a moment.
Instructions?
Yes.
You know what I think of those.
All right.
More trash.
There we go.
The motherboard itself?
No. Here we go. All right.
I just want to throw things.
All right, so let's put that aside here. Okay, so our motherboard. This is a BioStar motherboard, which is meant for AMD processors. One thing is that the size of this board is a little bit non-standard. Most boards of this type are what are known as micro ATX. And this board is technically micro ATX, but it's a little bit shorter than a normal micro ATX board, which this case is made for. So let's see how it's going to fit in here. We are going to just slide it on in and just take a quick look at where things are. And I'm going to prop this up so you can see it on the camera there. This is just a very rough fit. And just take it out. Now, what we know now is that it extends out from, whoop, got that? Great. From the inside of the case here, we need to put a couple of those standoffs over here to mount the board on. So I'm going to put those in place here. Let's see.
And when you get an empty case like this, it's very intimidating when you're ordering all these parts if you've never built a computer before. And you just get this empty box, essentially, and there's all these parts. It's simpler than it looks if you've never done it. It's a matter of screwing the parts that are pretty much all ready for you into the case. It's not a crazy complicated thing.
Yeah,
John's just attaching the these bolts will hold it in place when it's in.
Right. Yeah. I mean, these are all standard sizes. So if you have a motherboard, for instance, that supports ATX, micro ATX, mini ITX, and the case supports that, you can guarantee that it'll fit. So what I just did there, let's prop it up again, is just screw those two little silver things into the case, and those are going to allow for the support of the motherboard. So let's put that down and grab the board. So just going to do a quick test fit to make sure those are in the proper spot. Looks good.
Yoink.
Okay, so that's step one, is basically checking out the inside of the case, making sure all the standoffs are in place. And step two,
Looks like you got an I/O shield there.
that would be an I/O shield. Now this is the funnest part of any build because it has the most potential for cutting yourself. So basically, the cheaper the motherboard you buy, the more chance there is that you're actually going to cut yourself on a piece of sharp metal on the edge here.
Don't do it,
so
folks.
Here, hold that. No, it's actually okay.
Yeah, it's all
It
right.
actually is sharp though.
It is.
So what this is,
Adult supervision required.
so what this is basically the back panel of the case, and for any motherboard you buy, it's different. The ports will be different on different models. So when you install this,
Anyone who's seen the back of a computer will recognize this. Looks a
Right.
little different, but once you put this over it, it looks like any computer
right,
you've
exactly, yeah. So this is interesting. So this is needs to be punched out. So this will be fun.
seen. Got to add some fun little twists
Yeah,
and turns, don't they?
Yeah, there's basically some little bits of metal here that need to be popped out and put aside. Whoops. So basically, these holes in the I/O shield should match up to the ports on the case.
In theory.
In
If everything
theory.
goes smoothly.
Let's see. Looking good. Okay.
Resembles the PC you know and love.
Right. So, would you like to install the I/O shield that side up? Let me just get the wires out of the way here.
Please do.
Okay, we're going to do it from the inside out. Let's see.
Oh, that's just the fan controller hanging in my way. All right.
Right. So there we go.
I'm going to plop that in. And these are always a little tricky.
Yeah. So as soon as you get a position, we just give it a. It should pop into.
pop.
Whoops, there we go.
Boy. Doing this upside down is not ideal. I'd probably walk around the table normally, but
Yep. Yeah, you got it. There you go. There we are. But yeah, that snap is
that
the giveaway.
telltale snap.
All right.
Oh, I popped it back up. Joe! Live builds, folks. It happens.
No pressure, man.
No pressure at all. This is really, literally just a slab of metal, so you can't really break anything in this instance. There we go.
Ta-da! All right, so it's in place. Excellent. So when we put the board in place, what we're going to make sure, and you can't really see it from that angle, so I'm going to lift the case. There
Here,
is,
you can gesture freely.
yeah, so there are some little tabs in here, which let's turn it this way. You want to make sure that... Ah!
Joe!
Here we go.
Step
Put it in.
3 is do this
Do it again.
4 times.
Right, there we go. Which side is up? Let's see.
Never gesture blindly.
There we go.
Never build live.
All right.
This silly little part.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so we have it in place.
Anyway.
So what I was pointing out when it flew out was there are some small tabs in here that when you put the board in, you want to make sure that they press down on top of the board. If they don't, what has happened in previous PC builds I've done, put the whole system together, then you realize one of the tabs are sticking inside one of the ports. You have to take the whole system apart and start again. That won't happen today.
Not today. Not on our watch.
No. So we have the motherboard standoffs in place.
Yes.
We have put the I/O shield in place. We're ready to put the motherboard in, but what could be easier when you're building a system is to put some of the parts on the motherboard while it's outside of the case instead of inside the case. And this case is a little bit small and cramped.
There are
So
smaller.
There are smaller.
Believe it or
They
not,
come much smaller.
They do. This actually has a fair amount of room to work in, but just for the sake of the show.
Yeah, and for visual
John's
visual effect here, so you can,
Sanity.
we're going to do a couple of things on the board before we put it in. So on the main board here, we have in the center CPU socket. We're going to put the CPU in place, and then on top of the CPU, there's always a cooling fan and a cooling heatsink. So we're going to install those first. You, like I said, could do this after the fact once you have it in the case, but it's probably easier for access and for visual purposes to do it now. So let's do that. Let's make some room. Put our board down. Now, some folks are fussy about using an anti-static wrist strap when you're handling parts like this, and if you live in an arid climate, you probably should. You'll notice we're not wearing any sort of a strap or static protection, but if you start messing around with processors, good to touch a piece of metal and discharge any sort of...
Ground yourself.
Yeah, ground yourself, any sort of static electricity.
Yep.
So we need to put the processor in, which is, I guess you have it over there, the AMD box. Okay, so this is an AMD processor. We chose this. It's about $30, $40, depending on where you buy it from. It's called the A6 5400K. It's a processor with built-in graphics, and we're going to install it here.
We have a question out there while we're building.
Okay.
Where's your smock?
He's the doctor here today, folks. He's the lead lab technician.
So this is a genuine,
genuine.
yeah, genuine clean room coat, which we picked up in a lab tour in China. I'm afraid I only have one. If I'd known, I would have snagged you.
That's that's okay.
Yeah. So
I'll have to make do with my human clothes.
yeah, next time you can wear it. Okay.
I feel so special.
So this came out of the box here. This is basically the cooler for your AMD processor that we're going to be putting on here. I'm going to put it aside for the moment. Here's the chip that's going on the board. So again,
This is the first time you really can mess up something.
that is true. So on the bottom of this chip, there are several hundred pins. You want to be very careful when you are handling the chip to only handle it by the top.
Don't touch the pins.
Don't touch the pins.
Get your oil and grease and charge and humanness all over them.
Right, there we go. So let's take the chip out. If you would grab that, Matt.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. So this processor here is going to go in the motherboard slot. Okay.
A delicate drag and drop.
Yes, so
gonna hold
on
the-
the board, yeah, if you wouldn't mind holding the board. We just lifted up the load lever on the chip here, and usually,
Go ahead.
on the board, in one corner is a small arrow, and that indicates the direction. You can't just put this in any old way. You need to find the arrow on the socket, look at the chip, find the...
It's tinier than you'd think a
Yes.
directional indicator is, but they're all that size.
Yeah, it's pretty
just how it
subtle, but it's
Gotta-
over here in this case. So we've got our chip. We're going to put it in with the arrow, the arrow on the chip matching the arrow on the socket. So, and basically if you have to force it, you're doing it wrong.
It was very
So that
gentle
just dropped
drop.
in. So we're going to lower the lever. There it goes. CPU in place. So let's put the board down over here for a moment and grab our cooler. So this is an AMD stock cooler. It's small, fairly simple to install. Basically what you have is a big hunk of metal with fins and a fan on top to cool the metal as the CPU gives off a bunch of heat. You'll notice that there's a big bracket going through it here with a hookup that engages with these tabs on the board down here. So we're going to put that on, and maybe we can move this over a little bit
Yes,
so
I was
it's
just going to.
easier to see. Okay.
The main
So
attraction.
yes, so we're going to take the end without the lever on it. There's a lever over here, as you can see. It goes up and down. We're going to take the end without the lever, pull it through, and put the lever over the end of the socket here. Fit it into place. And then push the other end on the other end of the socket. It snaps. You throw the lever, and that puts some pressure down on it, and it's good to go. You probably shouldn't do this at
Nice
home,
and
by the
sturdy,
way.
but
I failed to mention, actually, before we put this on the bottom of the heatsink, there is a small square of what looks like adhesive. It's actually thermal paste, and it helps conduct heat from the CPU to the heatsink below.
really gets it on there. And if some builds, if it doesn't have the pre-installed, a lot of coolers don't have the pre-installed gel. You can buy a tube of paste yourself and apply it a little dot to the top of the CPU so that it sticks and conducts electricity.
That's right. Yeah, it conducts the heat. Yeah, it's a some enthusiasts who really get into this stuff will buy specialized.
There's a lot of
There's a lot of that stuff
thermal
out there.
paste. There's a lot of enthusiasts out there.
Yeah, but I mean, basically, what's here will suffice for.
And a lot of
for
them
our
do come
purposes.
pre-installed, so you don't have to glob it on yourself. We have
So-
another question.
Oh, we have a question.
What kind of performance are we going to get out of this PC when it's built? Like, is it going to be able to run like VR, maybe?
Oh, VR? Certainly not. So we have we have to install a video card to get VR going on this, and we'll be talking about that at the end. Assuming our system boots, we will be showing you some upgrades for it. But what you could expect from this is basically a system that's good for basic productivity work. You might be able to play some lightweight games on it, and it might be good for some light image and video editing, but it's not ideally suited for that. It's really more of a work PC that you can upgrade later for what you
Again,
need.
yeah, again, $300, simple builds, keeping the price low. Maybe in the future we do this more. We'll show off some more high-end stuff, but yeah, since the graphics is integrated into the CPU in this one, it's not a gaming or visual powerhouse by any means.
Yep, that's correct. So you'll notice I've been holding this little pigtail wire here, and this is basically the power for the fan that goes on top of the CPU cooler. Now, on every motherboard, there's I wouldn't say hundreds, but many dozens of pins on the board here where various connectors connect. And the trick is looking usually in the manual, if you haven't done this before, what corresponds to what. This is a CPU fan power connector, and you'll notice on the board here, which you can't really see too well, even probably on camera, but you can
Even
probably
up
see.
this close.
Yeah, but in the schematic behind you of the board, this is the board.
This is the board we're using.
Right. If you hold it like this, you will notice there's a connector over here that says CPU fan. And we can probably zoom in on it there a bit.
Gets a bit funky. It's on
there we go.
AMD's site.
All right, so we'll zoom it back down. It's basically a 4-pin connector. This has 4 holes. There's only one way you can put it on. So we're going to snap it on there.
Provide power to the
fan.
To the fan here.
Right. So what we have here now is the processor installed, the cooling apparatus for the processor installed, and the power to the cooling apparatus installed.
And that's what they call progress.
So where are we now? Checking our cheat sheet over here. Get this stuff out of the way. Memory. We should have some memory modules
We have some
over there.
RAM, don't worry.
All right, so we have a couple of DDR3 memory modules. This kind of motherboard uses what's called DDR3 memory, which was the memory standard for many years and is now being eclipsed by DDR4. With this kit we have here, we have 2 4-gigabyte sticks, and we're going to put them on the board.
For a total of weight, 8 gigabytes.
Yeah.
Got me for. I'm not good at math. Got me for a minute.
So we have the 2 sticks here, and we're going to install them in the board as soon as I can get them out. Let's turn the board around and show what we have here. So slots along the edge here. More expensive boards will probably have 4 of these slots here. We have 2. We've opened them in advance of putting things in, but let's just show you the action here. You would open the latches on the sides. Some boards like this only open on one side, you'll notice. So if you have a different motherboard and you're pushing down on it, it doesn't give. You're not doing it wrong, it just doesn't move.
Yeah.
But in this way, we open these up. We're going to, actually I should point out, if you look at the board here, there's a little notch in it. You want to match up the notch with the protrusion inside the
Yeah, because it's not lined up
slot
symmetrically.
there.
They're
Right.
kind of staggered, so you got to make sure you're.
Yeah.
I'm going to hold this while you.
Yeah,
jab
if
it
you
in
don't
there.
mind. The thing is, you can only put them in one direction. If you try and put them the wrong way, you'll be pushing it, it'll be rocking, and it won't go in. So let's put this in like so. Actually, we'll put it in this slot first. Okay. There we
I
go.
love those telltale clicks.
There we go. And yeah, if you hear a good click and both of the levers on either side come up, you've done it right. Okay.
Doink.
All right. So I don't know about the white and the yellow together, but
Not the greatest look, but you
right. But it was what was on sale.
know, budgets, people, they exist.
There is that. So these 2 sticks were $49 or thereabouts. They might have been a little bit cheaper at the time we bought them, but when we checked today, they were $49 for 8 gigs of memory.
That's pretty good.
All right. So, so that would be the installation of the memory. Okay. Now, we're about to put the motherboard in, but probably good to scout things out a little bit in advance because there's quite a lot of cabling sticking out of this case here, and we want to know where it's going to go. So, what do we have here? HD LED. So, the front of any computer case, whether it's a $30 case like this one or a $500 case, is probably going to have more or less the same stuff on it. Couple of USB ports, 2, maybe 4, couple of jacks for audio, and sometimes you may have an ancillary port or 2. This one doesn't have anything. There's also usually a couple of LEDs that indicate when the system's on or the hard drive is spinning. So we are going to find the wires that attend to those things and isolate them because these are the trickiest part of any PC build. And you can usually tell which ones handle the front panel buttons and lights by the fact that they're really skinny. So we're going to put those in one place. And then you're going to have some that are not so
More
skinny.
heavy-duty ones.
Right. So these tend to be used for the audio jacks in the front, the USB ports in the front, and the USB 3 ports in the front. You have oftentimes 2 different kinds of USB cables there. So we're going to put those all over there just to get them out of the way, and then move on to installing the motherboard. Okay.
There are a lot of cables and stuff. It's a little can be intimidating if you don't know what you feel like they all go to, but some of them are labeled, and there are usually only so many connections that you can make that as you do it, kind of by process of elimination, you'll see a clear picture comes in as you install things.
Right, but by the time you're done, most of these, as you see if you look up close here, there's a lot of little pins along the edge of the board here. By the time you're done, they're all going to be full up with something. So let's turn this around. So what we have over here are our ports, right? Those are going to match up with the port panel on the back. So we are going to take our motherboard, and the key thing here is to make sure that it fits underneath the little tabs in here, and we're going to shoot it into place. Okay. Looks like we got it. So I'm just going to put one screw in here.
Yeah, just so we can
we can
tilt
lift it up without everything falling out.
Yeah.
So actually, a little aside while we are doing that. When you have any PC case, it's usually going to come with, like I said, a bucket of screws and little things that you screw into the panel over here, standoffs. They're not all the same, and usually it's process of elimination in terms of whether they fit or not. So don't try and force anything. If you're forcing, it's probably not the right screw you're using. There's 2 different types here. So I'm going to take a gamble and use this one. I'm going to switch over our screwdriver to a long shaft unit here, and just put our first screw in. And Matt, if you could just put your thumb there and just sort of press the board this way so that lines up with the hole. Yeah, you got it. There we go. We're just going to put one of these in, and then we'll show you what we did
In a moment.
There we go. There we go. Okay, so let's hoist up the case a little bit.
Yoink.
So the board has 1 screw in it, but it's mounted in place. And if you look at the edge here, you'll see that the ports are coming through the back panel.
It looks like a real computer.
Starting to look like a computer, yeah. Thing that's key is always check these ports and make sure that the ports on the board line up with the cutouts here. Because if they don't, you're going to have to take everything apart and realign them.
Put something in backwards or upside down.
What do you think?
I think we did a pretty good job.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so I'm going to, maybe we can take this stand and put it aside for a moment.
Yes.
I'm just going to spend a moment here throwing a few more screws in here to mount the board in place.
Secure our board.
Yeah.
And yeah, those standoffs we put on into the actual case before now, these bolts, these screws are coming through the motherboard and hooking into those. So
right.
It's holding it between, pinching the motherboard between the case and these screws.
Yeah, the standoffs are there basically so the board isn't sitting on the bottom of the case.
It's lifted up off about
Right.
a half inch or so.
Right.
Off the case.
The bottom of the motherboard has a lot of metal contacts on it, and if you have metal contacts touching the metal of the case, bad things happen.
Gee whiz, John, they thought of everything, didn't they?
They really did. I'd hate to be the first guy who tried to do it and didn't
No.
actually use standoffs.
That's not a pretty sight.
No. So we're just going to keep putting the screws in. We have, I believe there's 6. It's a little more effort than I would have expected. But let's put them in. And I mean, if you've done a few dozen of these PC builds, you know exactly which of these screws you have to put in, which ones you don't. I think probably I have several desktops at home, and I think most of them have like 1 screw in the board holding it in place. You only really need 1 in the end.
It's got cut corners.
Yeah, totally. Once you do this a few times, you start getting a little lazy. Let's see. All right, so we've got that one in. Good.
Security
Okay.
is good.
Let's see. What do we have? 2 more.
2
okay.
more.
So we'll keep putting these in. Where is our 5th one? Here we go. Number 5.
Contestant number 5.
All right.
Yeah, they're just located around roughly every corner and a half of the board to just keep it in place.
Yeah, the standoffs are usually strategically located to support the board when you're plugging things into it. Because say you're plugging like a video card into the board.
You really got to push down on those.
Right, so there's usually a standoff in the spot underneath where the card is and where anything else that you're going to be pressing into the board is because...
you don't want to crack it in half.
No, you don't want to do that. And I have done that, actually.
Yes.
Yes, I have cracked circuit boards in half, as some of my colleagues here will attest. So...
No bueno.
Yeah. All right, so here's the last one. Okay, so How do you know when all the screws are in your motherboard? You take the case like this and you shake it up and down.
You did
If
it.
the board doesn't fall out, you did it right.
Man, that would have been pretty good if it did, though.
Yeah, it would have been.
End of the show.
There we go. All right, so I think we're good. So we have the board in place, and the next thing we're going to be doing is the power supply. Now, the power supply is where things start to get a little hairy, because we're adding another layer of cables on top of things that aren't plugged into anything yet. So we're basically going to have a giant octopus of cables sitting outside of this case, which we'll have to deal with soon. So this was some other packaging. We'll throw that aside and get the power supply out.
What did we choose here to run this budget system?
So this is an EVGA power supply. It runs about $25, $30. It's 400 watts, as you'll see the only name on it, EVGA 400 watts. It's basically good enough to power this system and maybe a low-end graphics card if you wanted to add one later. So we were thinking here, don't cheap out. Leave a little bit of overhead so that you can add some parts later.
The power supply is one of few parts, but that's almost always a good idea. In the future, give yourself room to add more things in that maybe you didn't do when you built it.
And trust me, after you install it, you don't want to install it again.
Yeah.
So buy the one you want now.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got some cable here tangled up. Okay. There's the power supply. And wrapping.
The more packaging we can throw,
Yeah, sorry, I don't mean
better.
to aim at you over
we're gonna
there.
hit Social Pete soon.
Yeah. So here's our power supply. So basically, an inexpensive power supply is typically going to have all the wires connected in one big bundle at the end over here, and in a big bunch over here. Some power supplies that are a bit more expensive are what are known as modular supplies. You could plug in only the cables you need, and it tends to be a little neater because you don't have a bunch of extra cables hanging around.
They're very nice.
Yes, we didn't get that.
No.
No. So that's what you get for your $25 to $30. A serviceable, but
Yeah.
slightly
Slightly more
supply.
complicated, yeah.
Right, so we're going to put this guy in. Now, the question is, which way do we put it? You could put
Some
it in...
freestyling involved in case building sometimes.
Yeah, so we're going to find out... actually, I believe there is only one way. In
Is there only one exhaust? There's only one. Yeah.
Yeah, the exhaust is over here, so you'll notice there's a fan here, which is cooling off the internals of the power supply, and it needs to be able to ventilate. On this case, on the bottom here...
There's only one way out.
Yeah, there is an exhaust down here, so we're going to position the exhaust next to the fan.
You want obviously the adapter facing out towards the back where the rest of the ports are so that you can plug in the power.
The power, right? And here we go. It's in place here like so. So what we're going to do is mount the supply here using some screws from the back here.
A lot of screws involved. in
Yeah,
PC
so we're going to
building.
grab some of these here. Put the short bit back on.
Look at all those cords. Oh my God.
All right, so let's put this in. So 4 screws on the back here we're going to run through. Okay.
4 screws and 7 years ago.
Yeah, when did we start building this PC? It feels like
7 years ago.
There we go. All right. So we will turn this around and show you what we did in a moment. But let's see, it looks like 3 screws are in. So basically, these go in through the back of the case. There are pre-drilled holes in the back of the case.
We'll show you in a second.
Yeah, and some holes in the power supply that match up. So if the holes don't match up with the holes in the power supply, you have to flip it over.
And it's a big hefty box, so you don't want it like hanging or upside down unless you have something to support it. In this case, it is on the bottom, so it's just going to be sitting on the bottom of the case.
Yep, in some cases it's on the top, but once you have 4 screws to the back of this thing, it's not going anywhere.
At least it's sturdy.
Yeah, so one more going in over here. Okay. Whoops. This one's a little misaligned. Ah, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. All right, man. Let's see. How do we do?
Pretty good.
Let's see.
It's,
All right.
as you see, lined up. There's now a power adapter. You'll recognize that as the thing you plug the power cord into, and that's where that comes from, is the big brick of a power supply that is inside.
There we go. All right, so we are moving on to the next step, which is going to be installing the power supply cables. So,
Yay.
all right, so that's this big bunch of stuff here. So let's undo that, and I think we probably need to stand back. So
I was just about to say, I feel like this
Yeah.
is stand time.
It looks like it. So let me just undo this bunch of cabling here.
While you do that, we have a question. Soldier Pete.
The $300 price tag, does that also include Windows 10?
Yes, it does. We factored in $90 for Windows 10. So technically, if you already have a Windows license or you perhaps want to put Linux or something else on this system, you could pull it off for a little over $200.
Or upgrade some of the parts we got and stay under 300.
You could do that as well. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you could, if you had a Windows license, get a video card in here that would be capable of some decent gaming for about $100 and pull off a $300 gaming PC.
Not so bad. Yeah, Windows is one of those things, unfortunately, if you want an OS, it's going to take up some of your system.
Yeah, it's a fixed cost, and $80 to $90 is pretty much as low as it goes in terms of getting an OEM version of Windows that you can install in here. So, okay, we've got it hoisted back up here. We've got our power supply in place. So there's a sea of cable here that we're just going to sort of put aside in favor of this big one here. Yeah. So this is the main power supply cable that you use to power the motherboard and most of the components that attach to the motherboard. You'll notice it has a little piece on the end that comes apart.
You clip that
you want it
into
snapped together,
yeah.
Right? It should be, and it's 24 pins. It's 2 by 12, and it's pretty much standard these days. Some older motherboards only use 20 of the pins, and that's why it breaks away.
Yeah, you'll see the if you see any instructions or looking up instructions for PC building online, when they say 2 by 12 or things like that, that's what they're referring to. These pin configurations, especially if you have a modular power supply. There's a lot of these going around, so you keep track of.
That's right. Yeah, and as a matter of fact, this is oftentimes called 20 plus 4 because you have 20 over here and 4 over here. You snap them together, you get 24 pins. So
that math again, it's bad.
Yeah, there we go. So we're going to take that, and there's only one place we could go on this case here. There's a very large connector here, which I'm going to hoist up the case a little bit. You can see it over here. You got it. That over there.
Behind the RAM right now, but
right,
it's there.
A little hard to see, but we're just going to snap this in there. Let's make sure this is aligned. Okay.
Boom.
That's all there is to it. So that's plugged in. All right. Okay, so that's the main power connector. Now, oftentimes on a motherboard, there's something called the CPU power connector, which is a separate feed of power that goes specifically to power the CPU. Now, I'm not sure if this board has one, so I'm going to take a quick look over here.
Let's go to the videotape.
It does. It says ATX PWR2. So what that is in most cases these days, or most motherboards these days, excuse me, it's a 4-pin connector.
That's a components joke, folks.
Yeah, they don't get much better than that, if they really don't.
They really don't. The best times when they're accidental.
Yeah. So let's see what we have here. We have, we'll get into what all these other cables are later, but here it is.
A nice subtle black, yellow, and orange and red colors for you.
There we go. Oh, this is it. Here we are. So actually, is that it? 4-pin. We want a 4-pin connector. Where is it?
Keep fishing. Go fish.
All right. Wouldn't it be interesting if this power supply didn't have one?
It sure would be.
Yeah, that would mean, will it boot? No.
No.
Yeah. Let's see.
An abrupt no.
An abrupt no. Interesting. We've got an 8. We've got...
Just cut it in half.
2 6s. Now this is perhaps where we get the manual out.
But we threw it across the room.
Yes, we did. Let's see. I will be right back.
Gotta go fishing. Gotta go manual fishing. I kept this one.
Zalman? Yeah, not that one. Let's
go fish.
see.
Go fish.
It's this one. Okay, let's take a look at the box. 20 plus 4. 4 plus 4. No, it does have one. 1. Yes, okay, so
it's hiding on us.
That it is. All right. It's the 8-pin cable, and we let... Okay, so this is going to be a little bit of improvisation here. It's not this... No, that's video. It's this one. Here we go. Okay, so we have an 8-pin cable here. Now, some...
A little unorthodox.
Yeah, so... Oh, I see what it is.
Okay.
Look at this.
That's why. It was
breaks
disguised.
in half. There we go. So, a little bit of background. Some motherboards take a 8-pin connector for this thing we're trying to do. Some of them take a 4. All I saw was an 8-pin, and it turns out that this has a little
that pesky
breakaway.
Clipping and unclipping mechanism came back to haunt us.
I've actually never seen that before. So I'm going to install
Not only
that.
are we helping you, we're learning something too.
There we are. All right, so let's show this off. So what we have here is the other half of that cable and the piece we just discovered plugged into the board. Let's see. So hopefully that's visible. All right.
Visible is good.
All right. So let's put that down there. All right, so we'll come back to that later. We're going to neaten this up a bit because there's going to be a lot of cable mess very soon in there. So that's going to be the power supply cables that go to the motherboard. Is there anything else in the case right now that needs power? I don't think we've put any. We
haven't installed any other parts.
Parts yet. So I think we need to move on from there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a bunch of other cable over here, and before it gets any more cluttered in here, let's deal with them.
Okay, I suppose we should.
I guess. So we'll do the easy ones first. Those will be the ones that are
And these are the ones that are built in and attached to the case for the front ports.
Right. So this whole bunch, as Matt was saying, these all are part of the case, and whatever case you buy, they're going to be pretty standard. You're going to have USB, audio, and cables that govern the buttons on the front of the case and the lights in the front of the case. So let's go through them in turn. This is the largest one. This is for USB 3.0. So if you have any blue USB ports in the front of your case, they're going to be powered by a cable that looks like this. It's got 20 pins, got a blue connector usually on the end, and there's usually a pretty easy to find socket on the motherboard to plug it into. So we're going to go inside and find that, which is over here.
We're going in, folks.
We're going in. Okay, and that's snapped into place. You can see if you would like to hold the case for a moment.
I would love to.
All right. It went in over here, so you can see this cable going there. All right.
Motherboards will all be different, but it should, as I said, process of elimination. Certain pins only have certain connections on the motherboard, so just keep looking for it.
There we go. All right, now these are a little trickier. This is the first set of cables that you actually have the potential to blow stuff up with. So you want to be a little bit careful with these.
Now we're talking.
There we are. And as some of my colleagues can attest, I have blown stuff up with these cables, so hopefully that won't happen today, but we will see. One of them says HD audio on it, and one of them says USB. USB is for the older kind of USB port. It's got a black insert on the inside. It's a little bit slower than USB 3, actually a lot of bit slower. It goes into a different kind of socket on the board. This is for the audio connectors on the front of the board, the one that says HD audio, and it goes into its own socket. Now, if you look really closely at them, and you probably won't be able to see this on camera, there are 10 pins, and in each case, a different one is blocked off. It's there's no...
It's filled in. There's
There's no way to put a pin through it. So you can't plug them into the wrong place, generally speaking, unless you force it, which I've been known to do.
Probably breaking some pins.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So we're going to start with HD audio. Now, on the motherboard schematic that we have here on the board, it says, you probably can't see it from there, but it says F audio 1 and a grid of 8 pins. In the case of this board, it's all the way down here in the far corner where you can't possibly see it on camera, so you'll just have to trust me. So let me put that in here, and we will show you the finished product when it's done.
It's really, it's just lining up pins, dropping them into place.
So basically what you're looking for is which pin is blocked, and you want that to match
the missing pin on the grid on the board.
Right, otherwise it just won't slide on.
Yeah.
All right, that one went on, so I think we're safe there.
It's probably right.
I mean, who needs audio anyway? USB, now. On the schematic that we have up here, we have a whole bunch of pins going down the side. This one says FUSB 1, FUSB 2. Some cases will require more than one of these connectors. So we're just going to use FUSB 1, which Matt will attest is over here.
Can confirm.
Yes. And plug it in. Okay. So not the neatest cabling job in the world, but we're going to hoist it again.
It'll have to do.
It'll have to do. If you would hold that there for a moment. This is the front panel audio. This is the USB 3 cable, and this is the USB 2 cable. So I think we are good on the front panel cables. Now, this is actually the worst part of the whole process, as anybody who's built a PC will attest.
Yes.
This is where we actually have to break out the manual. So
I'm
afraid I'll let you...
I don't want to read.
Yeah. So I don't understand why PC manufacturers and motherboard manufacturers just can't get in a room and get this straightened out, because it's been this bad since like 1985. But if you want to basically power...
Boy, that looks familiar.
Yeah, it kind of does. Yeah, so if you want to power basically the power button, the reset button, and the two little indicator lights in the front of your PC that show that it's on and that the hard drive's working, you need to put these in the right place. And what you have on the board is a grid of 10 pins on which you have to put these over very specific pins.
Yeah, unlike the others, these are not multi-pin fatheads. They go over a single or just two pins.
Exactly. So you have to look at a schematic and figure out where they go. So if you want to turn that towards the camera,
Yoink.
There we go. We have a grid of the motherboard here and where everything is supposed to go. And what we're looking for is front panel connectors.
I can no longer help you look.
13, front panel connector. Okay, so that's going to go here. So on our motherboard, that's going to be, if you look in the big schematic over here, this group of pins over here, and it looks like about 10, 12 pins in a 2x6 grid. And what we need to look at on the schematic there is which of those connectors go over which pins. So it may be on the back of that sheet, actually. Memory installation, power connection, CPU installation. Nope. All right, how about this side? Okay. Oh, it is it's just in very, very small type. Okay. So again, Matt will have to be my witness on this, but what we're going to do is plug in this cluster here, which is for the power switch, which is basically the power button on the front of the case, and for what's called power LED. Power LED is basically just the light that indicates the system's on. So I'm going to dig around in here for a moment.
He's looking for these guys.
Right. Okay. So pardon me while I turn the case away from you.
Don't look. It's behind the curtain.
Let's see. All right. Power LED. Okay.
A question while we wait.
Okay.
Would you say this is the worst part of the whole process?
Oh yes.
It's pretty annoying because every motherboard's different. They kind of hide from you where the pins are. It's like physically a little annoying to get them on the single-headed pins. So it requires a lot of precision. But
now some motherboard makers actually make this easier by making a little module that you could plug the little bits into. And unfortunately, this inexpensive motherboard does not include that feature. It tends to be only seen in more expensive boards. So it could be easier, but in this case it is not.
And the fact that this is the worst part of it that's pretty good because it's not difficult. It's just a little tedious. But if you know what you're looking for, which the instructions do help, you can find it in a few minutes.
Right. So I'll give you a bit of advice while I am plugging these things in.
Please.
Yeah. So you have two kinds of pins that are being applied here. One is polarized and one are non-polarized. And what that means is in some cases, the pin says there's a positive side and a negative side on each of the pins. If it says that there's a positive and a negative side, you want to get that right. If it doesn't say there's a positive and negative side, you can't actually put these in wrong. So in other words, you can reverse the connector and everything will be okay. So that's what I'm figuring out right now.
It'll all be okay.
Yeah. So what do we have here? So let's go to the next one. This says hard drive LED. So this one you'll notice actually has a positive and a negative on it. So for this to work, we need to put the positive side of the cable on the positive pin and the negative on the negative.
Like a battery.
Yep, pretty much. Let's see.
Hard drive LED, obviously this is the light on the front that indicates if the drive's spinning, if the drive's working, data's being written in red, what have you. It's usually the ones that's flashing or constant on and off on the front of your system.
Yeah, and on the board here, which you would need a electron microscope to see, I think, is a small plus, and it says HLED.
The writing is really tiny on these.
That it is. Okay. I think I got it one pin off. Now you see, I would probably do this with the board outside the case ordinarily, but it makes things a little awkward because then you have a board that's connected by a couple of fine wires.
Yeah, and you can't.
But it's definitely
move
easier.
Too much.
Yeah, and the other thing is having the power supply installed. I probably should have done this before I put the power supply in place.
Because it is a little bit in the way.
It certainly is. Live and learn. Okay.
Yeah, they are very, if you're not picturing what this looks like, it's one single little pin and you have a tiny thin head and you got to kind of get your fingers sometimes between other components or between other wires and get it on there. So after you do find it, which requires some detective work, it does take us a few minutes to get on.
Yeah, ordinarily I'm not this clumsy with it. It's just a very tight fit over here.
Yeah. I'm just gonna look on.
All right, I think we got it. Okay, so one
sympathy.
more. There we are. Okay,
That's
one
that.
more.
And we have the.
Okay, this one says reset switch. That's for, as you would expect, the reset switch. This one can go in either direction. So I'm going to take the liberty of just
getting it in there.
Yep. Okay. All right. So this isn't pretty, but if this system doesn't boot, this is the first place I'm going to look. This bunch of wires down here basically are going into this small cluster of pins and should be feeding all of the front panel with data or status information.
Yeah. And I guess the most annoying thing, other than any individual step, is just wire management in a build.
Yes.
And we're not doing pretty much any because we're just trying to do it live for you. But so you don't get this happening by the end. You want to tuck things away, kind of neatly, more patiently put them aside. Or you can do some of it at the end, but some of it just is. Or if you're careful about it as you go, you're better off.
Or that's the advantage of buying a case with no window on the side.
You shut it and you
close
don't.
it and you just ignore it.
You never know what it looks like again.
Go. Right. So we have that.
It does make it a little harder to work though.
So we have those in place now. Let's see. What do we have left? Let's take a look at our list here. We need a hard drive.
I mean,
I
you
guess.
only have, use, save, read, do anything with data.
Okay,
I guess.
I guess we're going to do a hard drive. All right, so let's see. Underneath there should be a solid state drive. So I said hard drive, but technically we're looking at a solid state drive. So we chose this.
Which are so tiny and cool.
Yeah, so this is a Toshiba OCZ branded solid state drive. Solid state drives have fallen in price seriously over the last couple of years, and at this point, we would pretty much recommend if you're building any PC, at least put a minimal solid state drive in it because they're just so much faster than a hard drive is. You want to have your installation of Windows or whatever OS you're using on here.
That's the common combination these days, while they're still a lot more expensive than a hard drive, is to have a smaller solid state drive, have your Windows on it, have a few things on it, a few other files, and have the big capacity in your system be a big hard drive that doesn't have your OS on it. But it'll load and boot a lot faster if you save your operating system to the SSD, even if it's just like a 256 or less size.
Yeah, that's perfectly sound advice. We don't actually have a hard drive in this system, although we would suggest if you're going to install a lot of games or any sort of large files on it that you do add one, and we'll show you how to do that afterwards. But basically, here's your boot drive. We're going to fit it into a slot over here. This particular
Some
case.
great label art too.
Oh, yeah.
Really keeping things.
Take a look at it now, because you're not going to see it again.
That's it. It's getting tucked away.
Yeah, unfortunately, it would be nice if we could mount it on like the top or something.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, this is going to be hidden for the ages. So let's put it in here. There's a
And SSDs are smaller and harder to break because there's no spinning
moving
disk.
parts, right?
So there's no moving parts to drop and ruin all your data.
Right.
Still don't throw it around.
Yeah, no, they are.
Don't there's still delicate technology, but
Let's see. So this did not come with screws. It doesn't appear. So let's throw that aside. And let's see. Where did our screwdriver go? We're going to scavenge one of the screws from the package over here and see if it fits in there. So again, this is one of those cases where you could really cut some corners if you're so inclined. If you put 2 screws in an SSD, it's not going anywhere. So we're just going to put 2 in on this side and call it a day. There we go. Okay, so SSD is mounted in place. So,
very simple.
Right, so now any drive that you put in the system is going to have 2 feeds. It's going to have a power feed and a data feed. And we have the power feed coming off of the power supply. And let's take a look. So there are 2 basic kinds of connectors on a power supply that you would use to hook up a peripheral. They're called Molex connectors, and they have 4 round pins on the end. We're not using those. And then there's the other kind, which is called serial ATA. And that's basically like a thin blade with a little notch in it. It looks like an elongated L. So that's what we're going to use. Serial ATA also describes the interface that this uses to connect to the motherboard. So let's put most of the cable out of the way over here, which in an area that's not being used. We're going to take the blade part and insert it onto the matching connector on the SSD here. So it snaps on.
very simple.
Okay, so that's got power. Now these came in the motherboard box. These are what are known as serial ATA data cables. So we're going to tear that open.
One, obviously, as you may guess, transmits power from the power supply. This one transmits data.
Yep, this is going to be the data from the boot drive to the motherboard. So let's take a look inside here. SATA 1. Okay, so
Much like the power connectors, you have to find the matching label.
So yeah, if you pop that up a little bit and hold it there. I'm going to just go to the schematic over here. On this board, let's see, just get my bearings. There are a couple of connectors over here which basically match this cable. There's also a couple sticking out the side, but we're not going to use those. You would only use them if you were putting 3 or 4 drives in this system, which we're only using 1. So we can install this on this port over here, which you may be able to see or not through Matt. But we're going to drop it in here. And again, this has a little L in it, so you just match up the shape of the L to the connector. Whoops, there we go. Okay, take the other end.
Into the drive.
Into the drive. Okay.
Boom.
And boy, we have a mess of cable in here.
It's getting big old spider web.
Yeah. So, so we have our SSD in. I think we're actually ready to seal it up and see what it can do. But let's do one thing
Answer
first.
our age-old question.
Yeah. So,
Will it boot?
will it boot? I think what we should do, however, is clean this up a little bit, because I have a feeling that these cables are going to end up in a fan somewhere. And when we turn it on, you're going to get a big rattling sound.
Probably tuck them away.
Yeah, so this case doesn't give you a whole lot of place to hide your sins. I mean, there's basically just a big gap over here. So let's turn the case upright.
See what happens to them.
Yeah, and see if we can tie some of these things down.
Enough of this. Enough of this stand.
All right, so we have a big old mess of cables here. Oh, actually, one thing I think we forgot to do. We have a case fan over here. This is basically an exhaust fan. It has a little bunch of cable hanging out here.
Built into the case, just takes the heat generated by all the parts, pushes it out the back.
Right.
And so that is all. It comes with a single head connector that goes to the motherboard.
Right, so we need to figure out where that is. Let's take a look at our schematic.
Usually it's a CPU fan somewhere.
Well, we plugged in CPU fan for the CPU fan.
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah, so there will be sys fan will work, and that's up in the corner. So in the same corner where we plugged in a bunch of stuff before, which would be over here, there should be a connector called sysfan. I'm just going to turn this a little bit so I can access it. Here we go. Okay. Yep, so we basically plugged it in there, and there's no way you can put it on wrong. There's kind of a groove and a tongue that match up over there. So we are going to make sure that any cables that are running through the case aren't sticking in the blades of a fan here somewhere. Like I said, the cabling job is not my proudest hour in this case, but it'll have to do.
Some cases often provide nice little cubby holes to tuck cables behind and hide, and it really makes it a lot easier to just kind of put everything out of sight, even if it's still a mess in the back. But
yeah, so
not happening here.
Yeah, what you could do is, if we wanted to get really neat about it, is you could take this side off, run some of the cables behind the case, and have them come out again on the other side where they're destined to go. And if we had another hour, we'd probably do that.
That is technically optional. So
yes, so
especially because this case, as we said, you're not going to see through this.
Yeah, seal it and forget it. That's going to be the idea. So we're going to put the side on.
Less pretty, but comforting in a way.
All right. Now, if we're lucky, we won't have to go in here again.
If it does, in fact, boot.
Boot. All right. So we're just going to put a couple of screws on the back.
It's just the hand screws that come with the case.
All right. So we're going to put the screws in. That's how confident we are that this thing's going to boot.
John is really feeling it.
Yeah, this is going to have to boot on the first try. I could feel it. Okay. So peripherals. We need keyboard and mouse to put on this thing. So we have behind the stand over here a...
What's behind door number 1?
Yes, here we go. It's the... What do we have? The Enhanced GX K3. So this actually goes well with this case. This is a $39, I believe, budget pseudo-mechanical keyboard, which we actually kind of like for the money.
Yeah.
It lights up, makes a nice clicking noise when you type on it.
That's a good sound right there.
Yeah, we like that. And USB, we're just going to plug them into one of the USBs in the back here.
The simplest thing you'll do in the whole process.
That is true. And then we should have a mouse. If you would do the honors.
I grabbed it. What did you grab here?
It's a Corsair Qatar.
Okay.
It's it's about a $30 gaming mouse. For a system like this, it's probably the most luxurious part we're putting on there. That's a pretty nice mouse.
It's a nice mouse.
Yeah. So that's going in. Last thing is, second to last thing is we need to put power onto this. So you'll notice, throw it outside.
John has thrown a record number of things today, I think.
It's fun. It's cathartic, I tell you. We have in the power supply box the power cable that will go to the wall. So if you would like to put that in the power supply, I'll plug it into our power.
Please do.
Over here. Okay. All right. Plug this in over. All right, you got it. Okay.
I got it. Oh no.
Oh, not long enough? Okay.
No, luckily,
All right, we'll
luckily
pull our system over a bit
luckily this moves.
and clear up some of the junk. Oh, we have our AMD sticker we need to put on the front of the case afterwards. All right, clear up things a little bit. Don't need that.
Don't need that.
Yeah, we don't really need that. And that's actually, this is actually my favorite part of the whole process, is just throwing everything off the table.
We love it.
We might need this actually. We might need that again after. Excellent. So, video signal. How is this going to talk to the monitor?
That's a great question. What kind of cable did we pull out for this? What first off, what was on the motherboard? What did we get?
Yeah, so let's do a little bit of background here. Turn the system around.
As best we can with these cables.
Yeah, the cable's a little tight.
That's all right.
So when you're picking a motherboard, it's lighting up.
Dear God. It's alive.
Interesting. Let me actually pull the power out for a moment. We'll boot. We don't want to ruin the surprise. There's two connectors over here. DVI and VGA. Basically, those are the two most basic video connectors that you're likely to find on any motherboard. And any slightly, I guess, upscale motherboard from this one. It's going to have HDMI or DisplayPort, which you would use to connect to either a higher-end monitor or to a big TV. This is a very basic board, so we chose a monitor here that's basically got a DVI or VGA connector. So we're going to we'll turn it back around, plug it on in.
Some old school connections. Obviously, yeah, these days you want to use HDMI for the most part. If you're using a high-end machine with a high-res monitor, you want a DisplayPort.
Yep.
But
that's a key thing. If you want to be able to do any kind of high resolution at all, VGA is not going to cut it. DVI, I think, will go to 1920. Is that right, or 2560? I think if it's dual link.
Yes.
Yeah, if it's dual link, you get 2560. But this is a pretty basic 1080p monitor, I think. So monitor connector going to back in the monitor and going into the DVI port on the motherboard.
Recognize those big, much more old school cables than the simple HDMI cables you're probably used to from your TV or if you do have a desktop from your desktop.
Right. So this is plugged in. Now the question is the monitor set to that input? We'll find out. Power's plugged in?
I plugged it back in.
I think we may be ready to give it a try. So
find out if it
will it
boots.
boot? I don't know.
Will it boot?
Let's
There's
see.
only one way to find out.
Let's see.
I hear fans.
Okay, we hear fans. That's a good sign.
Fans are good. The proverbial drum roll. This might have put itself back to
Hey, I
sleep.
saw something on screen there.
Yep.
What was that?
Dealing with an older monitor because we're using an older video. Yes, it looks like.
Reboot and select proper boot device or insert boot media. That's a good sign.
That means it works.
So here we go. All right. So what we're going to do now, at least we know.
What is that message? What is it looking for?
It's basically looking for a driver and operating system. So we're cheating a little bit here. We took Windows 10. We have a Windows 10 boot disk here, and instead of putting it on a
wasting a Windows key on this little guy.
Well, and also putting on an external USB drive and waiting half an hour for it to install, we're going to try taking Windows 10 and installing it via USB. Now, whether this board will support it or not, I'm not sure. So let's pull the plug for a moment, because I don't actually see a switch.
There's no, I noticed that
no
while I was
on-off
turning on.
switch.
There's no on-off on the power supply, which is odd.
Yeah, so
Just pull the plug
these are
out.
the perils of buying a $25 power supply.
Yeah, budget, people. Budget.
All right. So, all right, give it another shot. Let's see what happens.
It works again. It's churning. It's churning.
Okay. CMOS fail. Press delete to enter selection.
Good thing we got that keyboard.
Yep. There we go.
Boom.
We're in the. All right.
We're in.
We're in.
And one day, I got in.
All right. Let me just turn the keyboard around. It's a little difficult to.
No,
work
do everything
backwards.
upside down.
Ah.
That creates pseudo mechanical sound.
That is. Look at that. A Windows 10 logo.
Hey, I
There we
recognize
are.
that guy.
All right. So, will it boot? What's the answer?
Answer seems to be resounding yes.
It does appear so. So
You did a fantastic job.
And did you? So, if you have the next 45 minutes of your life to spend watching Windows 10 install, you're
And
welcome
boy, do
to.
I.
Yeah, we can get it started. But while we get it started, Matt, you might want to take a look in that box over there, because I brought along a few extra goodies.
Is it a surprise for me?
Yeah, well, yes, it is. In the box on the floor there, we've got a whole bunch of parts. So,
I
know you
actually
probably-
might steal one of these.
Yeah, well, we'll negotiate that after this broadcast. But basically, what we have in here are a bunch of possible upgrades that you could do to the system at not too much expense to make it into either a gaming system, a slightly more powerful productivity system, or a bunch of other things.
Because
So-
yes, we did do a $300 budget. Ideally, though, you would have some sort of specialization in here, whether that be a cheaper video card or something that won't cost you a fortune to upgrade, but it'll make it a little more useful than just a bare bones upgradable system.
Right. So what we have here, so I brought an array of video cards. So let's take them out. So the first thing you could do.
That's what I wanted to steal.
Yeah. There we go. Well, if you want to steal those, there are better ones to steal, I would say. That. Oh, okay. There we are. So, thing to explain here is that if you wanted to turn this, say, into an inexpensive gaming system, there are two ways you could go. Actually, two things you should do. Excuse me. You have a video card upgrade, which would basically let you play at 1080p on a monitor like this at full detail settings. It will cost you about $100, so you're up to about $400 in this system. If you're going to do that, a lot of recent games require 4-core processor. Now, the AMD processor that we put in here was nice because it was very inexpensive, but it's only 2 cores. AMD also makes a processor called the X4845, which Computer Shopper has reviewed and likes for this kind of system. It will fit in this board and basically runs about $70, so an additional $40 on top of the cost of this system. So now you're up around $440, $450. You could basically turn the system into a 1080p gaming, I wouldn't call it a beast, but it would play 1080p games pretty well, and for under $500. So the AMD Athlon X4 845, you would swap that in place of the AMD A6 chip that's in there. The cards that we have here, we have 3 different samples. These 2 are AMD-based cards. This one is borderline for this system, both because I'm not sure it'll fit, and I'm not sure the power supply can take it. But this is...
That's why, as we said, you always give yourself a little headroom with the power supply.
That is right. Yeah, this one will these others will definitely work. But these both here are the Radeon RX 460 and Radeon RX 470. Yes. They run respectively anywhere between $100 and $110 for the RX 460 and $170 to $190 on the RX. Sorry, this is the RX 460. $170 to $190 on the RX 470. Both of them are really good 1080p cards. They will give you gaming at full 1080p resolution with most of the details turned up. And the nice thing about the lower end card is that you'll notice on the edge here there is no power connector. Some video cards require a power connector and therefore also have a higher power consumption. This one is probably a little bit much for the power supply in the system. This one would work just fine.
You don't want to blow the components or the board.
What'll happen is it won't boot.
It'll kill it.
It just won't boot. Yeah. And if you want to go on the NVIDIA side of the aisle, we have an MSI version of the GeForce GTX 1050 that runs about $110. Many other makers make GTX 1050 based cards from ASUS, Gigabyte, many other makers, Zotac. This runs about the same price. It's more or less a wash between the RX 460 and this card at 1080p. I would say the Radeon has a slight advantage, but nothing really to write home about. And also, there are different versions of these that are slightly overclocked, and those can make up the difference. So it's really more of a like a religious issue.
We have a question.
How does the 470 compare to the R7 370?
R7 370, that's a good question. I would actually have to look at some specifications for that. I suspect that it's probably a step up. I think we tested the 270, but we skipped the generation with the 370, so I would have to actually look at benchmarks to figure that out. However, what we can tell you is the 470 is an adequate card for 1080p gaming. And if you're playing modern games at 1080p, you're going to be all right with it.
And that's a computer shopper guarantee.
There we go. A couple of other things in the box of fun here. We discussed the Athlon X4 845. And
what else you got?
One other thing. It's just a hard drive. I mean, if you notice when we were inside the case here, there was a vertical bay for sliding a hard drive in. The SSD that you have in there is only 120 gigabytes. You'll be able to get Windows on it.
Couple things, a game.
Yeah, okay. Well, with today's games, a game. Yeah, you're right. 4 terabyte hard drive. Probably a little more than this kind of system warrants, but a 2 terabyte hard drive for under $100. You know, you will have plenty of space for games or if you do video or image editing. We would suggest that one of the first upgrades you make in a system like this is probably to add a platter hard drive.
And if you really insisted that you wanted storage from the start, yes, you don't need an SSD. You could have gone with a bigger one out of the gate, but SSDs are really good. So.
Yeah, I mean, the system boots up much quicker if you have an SSD in there, and once you've used one, it's kind of hard to go back.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to install that, you would open up the side, use the SATA cable that we had, the extra one here.
Even smaller cases have a tray for usually at least one, if not two, extra slots for hard drives. So.
Yep. Yeah. So you basically just connect up one of those power connectors and SATA cable, plug it into the motherboard, and you're good to go. And you got 4 terabytes, 3 terabytes, 2 terabytes of data.
Raw storage.
Raw storage. Yes. So that's all we got. It looks like we are at the Windows login, or excuse me, the Windows key login screen. So if we wanted to go further with this, we would type in our Windows license key and wait half an hour while everything installed, and we'd be good to go.
And it gives you those new classic Windows 10 reassuring messages as it installs.
Right.
Everything will be ready for you in a moment.
We're getting things ready.
We're getting things ready. Or when you update, everything's right where you left it.
Yes, that's right.
Very dystopian.
So here we go. So our first will it boot? It will boot.
It will, in fact, boot.
Next time, we hope to do something a little more complicated, install some fancy lights, maybe a video card or two. And see where we can go from there, add some more storage, and basically build it out. But if you want to build this system yourself, you can also check out the text version of this story on computershopper.com.
Yes.
We should be able to put up a link on the comments, and I think we're good to go.
Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I've been Matthew Buzzy from PC Mag. This has been John Burek from Computer Shopper, and hopefully we see you again sometime.
All right.